not only change the speed of the race, but also some of the tactics?
Well, certainly the racers try to get out ahead. They try to avoid any kind of hazardous situations, and of course it's easier and safer at the front.
We mentioned nearly 100 riders today. Some of those are professional and some of them are amateur. For the people at home, what's the difference?
Of course, amateurs are eligible to compete in the Olympic Games. Professionals may race in the Tour de France. That's a professional-only event. In America, most of our races are open. The reason really that they're open is just because we want to have the best competition we can at an event like the Carolina Invitational, and that's what we've got here today.
All right, we have a very strong field as we get set for this race. You know the course, you rode it earlier today. Who are your favorites?
I'd have to say that professional racer Doug Shapiro has the best chance to win today. He's doing really well, and I think that, you know, he's run a lot of races this year. He's been in really top contention. His form is really good as he prepares for the World Professional Championships later this month. And of course, Norm Alvis, his teammate, 7-Eleven teammate, is an amateur. He made the Olympic team for the team time trial team, and he's another real contender here today.
But again, as you mentioned, there are a number of strong racers in this field, so if somebody else wins, it certainly won't be a surprise.
No, it really won't. And the great thing about a criterium and a great thing about bike racing is you never know who's going to win the race.
All right, we are set for the start of the men's criterium here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We'll come back to bring you the exciting start. Stay with us on USA for the men's criterium cycle. And as you can see, the riders are bunched up at the start-finish line, and we're set to begin the men's criterium. 85 minutes, an hour and 25 minutes on this just under 1 mile loop throughout the streets of downtown. Connie, these cyclists right now, as they get set to start, they look pretty calm.
Well, they are pretty calm. You know, bike racers race 60 to 70 to 100 races in a season. It's a lot different than running, where you get injured if you race too much. In cycling, you just become better when you race a lot. So these racers, they're used to this, and they're excited about it. It's a fun race. It's the first time we've had an event like this down here in Charlotte. And, you know, they're just waiting for the gun to go off. That's the hardest part, is just sitting on the line.
It will be interesting in the first lap. I would imagine that's the most dangerous, when especially that first turn with everybody bunched up.
It sure is. The riders really like to get off the line quickly and avoid the first lap jitters. There's always a couple of younger, less experienced racers in the field, and they're more nervous than the more seasoned racers, and that's what the more seasoned racers have to watch out for.
All right, we are just about set to get underway. The starter has her gun raised.
Riders ready. Okay, we're underway.
And they are underway. The gun never went off, but it didn't stop these guys. We're underway in Charlotte.
That's right, and you can see that the red, white, and blue stars and stripes jerseys of some of our Olympic team members in the field today. It's very exciting to have some of the Olympic team members here. They've just selected the team in the last 2 weeks, and of course the Olympics are still another 5 weeks away, but this is another tune-up race for them.
8 members of the Olympic team time trial team are here competing for 4 spots. They have until August 20th before those 4 names will be announced, but certainly every race is important for these riders as they have to impress their coaches. And you see the field successfully navigating the first turn as one rider has already broken out into a lead. And we did have one minor accident in turn number 2, and you see the rider getting a new front wheel. He seems to be fine, and he'll be back on in just a moment.
You see the pack all together there. One Plymouth Reebok rider off the front. He obviously doesn't want to wait around and get involved in any kind of crash on the first lap. You know, every rider has a different tactic, and of course, not every move you see will work.
So they continue to work their way around on this first lap and get a feel of things. They go out on their own long before the race and get a look at the track and see where the turns are and try to set up. But it's obviously a lot different when you're in there with close to 100 riders than it is when you're practicing by yourself.
No, and the racers get used to riding together in a big pack. You can see that they're used to that. That's probably the thing that's most unusual to the recreational cyclist who's used to going out and maybe riding a good distance. Maybe they can ride their bikes for an hour and 25 minutes like this event. Maybe not this fast, but they certainly would be nervous in a pack this size.
The crowd here at the start-finish line beginning to respond because they made the final turn and they're coming down the straightaway on the home stretch as they'll cross the start-finish line for the first of many, many laps. And remember, it's not how many laps. This is a timed criterium. 1 hour and 25 minutes to decide the winner. So one lap has been completed.
And that's Drew Halderman just hanging on to his lead there. You see the pack closing in on him, and already in this second lap of racing we'll be having a preem sprint.
And we should explain what preems are. There's a lot of money for the top 30 men here at the finish, but there's also $3,500 in preems and hot laps to be awarded. Tell the folks what's the difference and what happens.
Well, a preem sprint is really a sprint, a race within the race itself. It's a sprint to the finish line, and usually it's a one-place preem. That means the first rider across the finish line will win the cash or the merchandise prize that they put up. In this case, it's $100. So that makes the riders
see how they're picking up the pace.
Exactly. That motivates the riders in a lap event like this in a criterium. It keeps the speed of the race high. It makes the race more interesting, and it forces the racers to have maybe more aggressive tactics than they would ordinarily have. And it's just purely fun for the racers as well.
Now we also have hot laps. That's a little bit different than a preem, where the fastest, they'll designate certain laps, and the fastest of those 5 laps throughout the race will win the hot lap money.
That's right, and that means that on those other 4 laps that the racers go unrewarded if their time isn't fast enough. So you're taking a bit of a chance there. At least on a preem lap you know what you're winning, but at the same time the hot lap is worth $700, and that's a lot of cash.
We talked about this in the women's race earlier. There's a little bit of pride on the line too.
Well, that's right. The racers have a lot of fun going for the preem sprints and for the hot lap, and you know, of course there's a little bit of that pride too, because it is the fastest racer on that lap that takes that prize.
So the racers continue to work their way around the turn. And Connie, what's the strategy early on? It's a pretty quick pace here, but will things settle down after the first 5 or 10 laps?
Well, the pace of the race certainly is higher in the first laps, and especially here we see the sprint for the first preem, and it looks like Tom Schuler with his head down. No, it's not Tom Schuler. We're looking at one of the other 7-Eleven
number 70,
riders.
Tommy Matoush.
Oh, Tommy Matoush, one of the 7-Eleven teammates of Tom Schuler. That's a surprise. He's an amateur racer. Really had a good sprint there, really broke it up.
And he's still keeping it going. Obviously, the sprint helped him get a lead. A little bit of a breakaway, maybe?
Well, I think he'll keep it going. You can see him there pedaling through the turn, keeping his speed up because he doesn't want to lose the advantage. He's just gained for the work, and you see the 2 riders chasing him there. Breakaway this early probably won't work, but it makes the race more interesting.
We talked moments ago about what is the strategy. What are they trying to do here in the first 10 laps or so? It is a very fast pace. Are they just trying to settle in and get a feel for how riders are doing? Are they trying to establish something?
Well, I think in the early laps of the race, when you have some local riders that maybe don't have the finesse in the pack, the key is to keep the speed high and to avoid the early race crashes. A lot of people just want to check out, you know, how everyone's doing. A lot of the amateurs have just come off the Olympic trials. Some of them are frustrated. Others of them are tired. You know, it's a difficult process, and as I said, cyclists race a lot, and so it's hard to be fresh for every race. So some of it is just feeling your own body and seeing how you're doing yourself.
You see them bunching up here on the streets of Charlotte. It's a fairly wide open course, one narrow area, but other than that, it's pretty wide open, kind of flat, and there's a lot of places where you can put those tactics to use.
That's right, and in the lead now you can see in the center of your screen that Steve Speaks of the Weedy Schwinn team. We still have Matoush working hard in the 7-Eleven jersey, and also Norm Alvis on the U.S. team, who also races for 7-Eleven, is right up there, and they're still riding hard, but they've pretty much been caught by the pack. They don't want to give up yet, though.
A lot of people have come out here this afternoon. They kind of scattered a little bit during the rain, but they were all back in force. Cycling is becoming so popular in this country. Over the past couple of years, it's really exploded, hasn't it?
It really has exploded. There's a lot more racing. The growth of licensed racers is really great, and you know, it's really a lot of fun for me to watch the sport grow, because you know, having been involved with it in the 70s when it wasn't as popular, now we see the tremendous growth of interest because of triathlons, because of the Olympic Games, our successes there, and you know, it's just great to see it, because cycling is a sport for everybody. Everybody knows how to ride their bike, but it's takes a little big, it's a big step to get into a bike race like this.
Here was the speed on the last lap. If we could take a look at it, Jim Copeland averaging 29 miles an hour. Is that a little higher than you thought it might be, or is that standard for a race like this to start out a little bit quicker pace?
No, I think that for that hot lap sprint, you know, we can expect to see the pace high. We had those 3 riders in the lead, breaking away, and you know, they kept the speed high. They're still keeping the speed high, and when you come down this slightly downhill stretch into the finish, really helps you out. It's a little bit windy now since the clouds have rolled in, but you know, that's a pretty respectable speed.
And again, no one's really broken away yet. The field's still relatively close, and I imagine it'll be that way for a while until they get a little closer to the finish, and then they begin to employ some more of those team tactics.
Now we see Andy Paulin. He's one of the bigger racers in the field. He's on the team time trial team. He will compete in the Olympic Games. He is really strong. You can just see his size. You can see his power racing on the U.S. team. And this is the hot lap right now, so he's really going for it. You can see the strain of the exertion on his face.
Andy Paulin coming into the final stretch, about 50 yards from the start-finish line on this hot lap. That's a pretty quick lap. 1 minute 59 seconds for the first hot lap by Andy Paulin. And again, they'll have 4 more here in the race, and whoever has the fastest of those designated ones will win some money.
That's right, and you can see Paulin now. He's just kind of coasting. He was really working hard a moment ago, and now you see he shifts into an easier gear. He looks back. He says, hey, it's too early to go anywhere. I did my job. I took that hot lap. He's got a big gap, and maybe he thinks somebody will, try to bridge the gap up to him and join him, but I think he'll be content to go back into the field and rest a little bit.
Andy Paulin on that last lap picked it up just a little bit. 1 minute 59 seconds, an average speed of 30 miles an hour. I think the thing that amazes me the most, Connie, is the fact that these guys can keep up a fairly strong speed for an hour and a half. They have tremendous stamina and condition.
It's really amazing, and Andy Paulin is used to this, and he's being chased by the pack right now.
All right, Andy Paulin is our leader here at the men's criterium at the Carolinas Invitational. We'll come back with more racing on this. Welcome back to Charlotte, North Carolina. Here at the Carolinas Invitational, the men's criterium continues throughout the streets of downtown Charlotte. A 1 hour, 25-minute timed race, a 9/10 of a mile loop throughout Charlotte, North Carolina. Here are the standings after the last completed lap. Randy Parker is in first place, Norm Alvis is next, and then Paul Willerton. So those are your top 3 right now, but again, we are very early in the race, only 10:36 at that time, and we've got a long way to go. 9/10 of a mile course. Connie Carpenter-Finney took a look at it earlier this morning, and now through her eyes, we'll give you a look at this course here in downtown Charlotte.
Is really difficult, and you get up around in those turns, and of course if you're in the back of the pack you're losing some time, and you come down into that home stretch, and even though it's downhill, it's really a lot of work to get all the way down the home stretch into the finish.
That's interesting because that little uphill pull looks so subtle when you just walk the course instead of riding.
It really is a difficult course, and it's going to take its toll on the racers. It'll be a difficult time for them, and we've still got Norm Alvis really riding well out in front. Really a strong rider.
Norm Alvis continues to lead here at the men's criterium. Again, it's an hour and 25-minute race.
And the second rider now is Sean Wallace. Now, he's a professional racer. He's from England, and he's a very strong, very fast racer. He used to have a world record at one point in one of the speed events, but he does very well in American racing. He's been living here for a couple of years, and this is a good, strong breakaway here. This could amount to something, although it's still really early in the race.
Still early, but from the looks of things, they have a pretty good lead right now.
Yeah, they really do, and you can see they're not working really hard, but they are working smoothly together. They're each going to the front, doing their work. You can see the slack kind of face on Norm Alvis there. It's, when a racer is working really hard, they have to kind of let their face go, and, when they're really grimacing, that's when a racer is struggling. But when you see that slack look in their face, you know he's in control.
So the 2 lead riders continue to work the course. It looks so empty out there with those 2 alone. Is that a good feeling to be away from this pack, even if you're not sure sure how far apart you are?
On the backside of the course where the turns come, one block apart, it's easy to get out of sight. And as they say, out of sight, out of mind. If the pack can't see you, a lot of times they give up their chase. Then you come into this long home stretch. You can see a long way down the road, and it really motivates the pack to chase. So it's difficult for the riders when they get on a long stretch, like they are now on the home stretch, but at the same time they see a small group chasing, but the pack is pretty far behind, and it's still so early in the race.
And we have just heard the bell, and that means that is another preem lap, and so I would expect the pace to pick up considerably because there is some money on this lap. All right, there is a preem lap, money on the line. We'll go to a break, we'll come back, and we'll see who wins the money. The race within the race at the men's criterium here in Charlotte. Two men have broken away from the pack, and they have just crossed the start-finish line on what was a preem lap. There was some money involved there, so a little bit of sprinting as they work past the finish line. And the rest of the pack is just now coming across the start-finish line. So not a substantial lead, but at least a significant lead for Alvis and Norman right now.
Yeah, it really is. And you look at Norm Alvis, he is a very strong, very smooth rider. Look at the position on the bike. He's working almost effortlessly. He's on the U.S. Olympic team. He's a very strong rider. He's sponsored by 7-Eleven. That's one of the strongest trade teams in the country. He's really come on this year. He wasn't a real factor last year, and this year he has just been hot.
Connie, you mentioned the U.S. Olympic team. Can you assess what their chances will be in Seoul for both the men and women?
Oh, it's difficult to say right now what will happen in Seoul. In 1984, we won so many medals. We won 9 medals in cycling, 4 of them gold. It would be very difficult for us to take home even half that many medals this time around, and I think we would be happy if we could do that well. Our team time trial team is very strong. They're competing in the event today, and I think for the men, they may be our best chance. But in the women's events, we have really strong possibilities in both the road race and the women's sprint competition. So we may see a few medals.
And you see some action happening here. The field beginning to push, trying to catch up with those two men, Sean Wallace and Norm Alvis, who are the leaders right now. But again, the rest of the pack beginning to push. Some of the riders up top there beginning to stretch it out a little bit more. I guess they just don't want Alvis and Wallace to get too much more of a lead. Better to keep them within reachable distance, even though it is very early in the race, as you said.
That's right. One of the biggest differences between bike racing and marathon running is that in a marathon event, when a runner breaks away and gets a gap like this kind of a gap, it's very difficult to close it. But in a bike race, the distances open up and close down very quickly, and it depends a lot on the morale of the pack, who's willing to do the work to chase. You can see now how smoothly the two leaders are working. Sean Wallace there in the front, Norm Alvis right behind him, and they're just really clicking off the lap times real consistently, real smoothly, whereas the pack kind of has more of an accordion effect. They're speeding up, they're slowing down, and it's difficult.
It is the men's criterium here in Charlotte, North Carolina. You're looking live at the Norm Alvis and Sean Wallace as they wind their way through the streets. 9/10 of a mile this course throughout downtown Charlotte. It's an hour and 25-minute race. Connie, in a race like this, in a criterium, what is the difference for a rider with fans? Now, you have a lot of cycling fans who will come out to a road race, but usually you'll see a lot of them at the beginning and at the end. Here, there are fans throughout the course. Does that make it a little better for the riders?
Oh yeah, it certainly is. That specialty of a criterium event is the fact that you do many laps on a closed circuit course that enables the spectators to come out. It enables you to kind of absorb the crowd a little bit, as it were. It's really great for racers. You know, it always makes you perform better, I think, when you have a good crowd.
You mentioned, we talked before about Alvis and Norman, Norm Alvis, excuse me, and Sean Wallace, who are in the lead, and you talked about body positioning. Are there subtleties in cycling that put a world-class cyclist above the rest? Are there little things that you can do on a bike?
Well, certainly the position, the smoothness, the efficiency is very important, and you see Norm Alvis, who's leading, and Sean Wallace, who's in second place. They just have tremendously good form on the bike. They look very smooth, they're very efficient, but if you watch them closely, you can see them different. Norm Alvis pedals with his knees in a little bit. Sean Wallace's knees are pointed out more. Norm Alvis is taller than Sean Wallace. You know, there is no one perfect body type for cycling. Sean Wallace is really built like a little fire hydrant. You know, he's a fire plug. And Norm Alvis is taller and lankier, and yet here they are going the same speed around the course.
When they get into a situation like this where they've broken away from the field, can their little mini race here push them further ahead of the field where they're battling each other back and forth? Will that make them maybe go a little quicker than they had planned on, do you think?
At this point, Sean Wallace and Norm Alvis are not battling each other. They're working together, even though they compete for two separate teams. And in the end, if they were to stay away in this small breakaway, they would be then battling each other on the last lap. At this point, they are working together. They are best of friends. They are relying on each other because look at this pack that's chasing them. If they weren't working well together, there's no way they could hold off a hard-charging pack like this.
Interesting concept in cycling. You have to work with your opponent or nobody's going to win. Sean Wallace's time on the last lap, 2:06, 2 minutes 6 seconds. That's an average speed of 28 miles an hour. So the pace stays about the same. They started at about 27.5, 28, got it up to 30 on one of the pre-money laps, and it's still right about there. So they continue to stay at a fairly quick pace throughout the streets of Charlotte.
And right now they're holding about a 17-second lead. They actually lost 2 seconds on the last lap, but that's not really significant at this point, and 17 seconds isn't really significant either. You know, it's really not a substantial lead. You see our favorite in there, Doug Shapiro in the 7-Eleven, the red, white, and green of the 7-Eleven, sitting in the middle of the pack, conserving his energy, probably thinking when these two are caught, now's my time to go. He's waiting.
That's another tactic in cycling. A lot of times, as we said before, a lead is misleading because you don't have to be up there now. There's a long way to go. There's about an hour left to race. And, you bide your time. You conserve your energy. Save it up for that big push.
That's right. And we can see right there that Sean Wallace and Norm Alvis are making the turn. They had a whole straightaway, and the pack was yet to come around the turn. So out of sight, out of mind, they've got an advantage there.
Sean Wallace and Norm Alvis continue to lead this thing, and some of the riders now trying to break away, breaking to the front of the pack. But right now it is still Sean Wallace and Norm Alvis at the men's criterium here at Charlotte. We'll come back with more men. Norm Alvis and Sean Wallace continue to lead the field here at the men's criterium in Charlotte, North Carolina, but in the pack just behind them, Doug Shapiro, one of the pre-race favorites, has begun to make a move. He is beginning to chase. Andy Pollan, however, from the U.S. team is helping to block. It is teamwork out here, just like it is in any other sport. It is a team. All the war in Los Angeles, an individual goal, but how important was the USA team to that effort?
Well, I think even if the team isn't there helping you right at the finish line, there's a lot of support within the team structure that really helps a lot. A lot of it's moral support, a lot of it's just knowing they're there during the race itself. And of course, in the end, when you win a bike race, maybe you do it on your own, you know, at the end, but you need that support to be successful in cycling. There's no question about it. Not only from a corporate standpoint where you get, you know, sponsorship money to get you from race to race, but also just, you know, to keep you going. Bike racing is a tough sport, and without a good team structure, you're lost.
It's an expensive sport too. I'll tell you, these bikes, the cost of these things are skyrocketing.
They really are, and most of these teams have very good equipment sponsors, whether it's Cannondale, which is an American manufacturer, and Schwinn, which is an American manufacturer, or foreign sponsorship. You know, we really see a lot of really good, solid sponsorship for the top racers, but it's a tough sport to break into because it is so expensive.
Sean Wallace and Norm Alvis is still up there, but now the field is beginning to close in on the two leaders, and things are beginning to tighten up a little bit.
You can really see the whole field starting to split. Sean Wallace simply will not give up. There we have some of the chasing from the U.S. team. We have Doug Shapiro, who of course is our race favorite in there. You can see how the field has fractured. There's lots of gaps in the field. The field is one by one, all out chasing.
And from the looks of the things, the way it's stretching out, they have increased the speed. So the men continue to race at a swift pace here in Charlotte. It's the men's criterium. Less than an hour to go as they race through the streets of downtown Charlotte. The men's criterium here at the Carolinas Invitational. It's the men's criterium cycling race event here in downtown Charlotte. As you can see, things are a lot tighter than they were at the start of this race when Sean Wallace and Norm Alvis took close to a 20-second lead. They have now been caught. Doug Shapiro now up there in the top group. He is one of the top professionals in the world, and he is making his mark right now.
difficulty right now is that we have 14 or 15 riders in that lead group, and it's difficult for a group that big to organize and work well together. We see one of the U.S. team riders again taking off, again making a good, strong effort. They're really riding well today. It's Jim Copeland, who regularly rides for the Sungkyung team. And, you know, these riders are really aggressive today, the U.S. team. I like to see that when the amateurs are out there really setting the tactics for the event and making the professionals like Shapiro do the chasing and the counterattacking. You know, I like to see the amateurs riding aggressively and not waiting for the professionals to make all the decisions.
So right now, Doug Shapiro is the leader. Andy Pollin is in second. Tom Harberts is in third as the racing continues. You mentioned some key words here in cycling, Connie. Maybe we should talk about some of those for the folks, about breaking away and about blocking and drafting and those sort of things.
Well, that's right. Right now we see three riders working together in a breakaway group. They have made an attack. They have, you know, made an effort which has gotten them a gap from the main bunch, and so they are in essence in a breakaway group. They're working well together. They're drafting off of each other to minimize the amount of work that they have to do at the front of the pack. Right now we see Andy Pollin, that big, strong U.S. team rider, out in the front. Andy Pollin, Jim Copeland, and Doug Shapiro.
There's a shot from atop our helicopter. You get a good look at the leaders, and it gives you an indication just how fast they are moving along the streets at a pretty good clip. It also gives you an indication of the lead they have over the rest of the field. But again, it is still fairly early in the race, not an hour to go, but still plenty of time. And as we saw the early leaders who were caught, that can very well happen again.
These three riders especially are motivated on this lap because we have another hot lap. This is one of those laps where the speed of the lap counts, as well as the guy who crosses the finish line first. There's $700 on the line for the rider who has the fastest lap. And so we see Jim Copeland, we see Doug Shapiro, and there's Andy Pollin now in third. They keep changing up the lead. It doesn't really matter which one of those riders is in the front. They're working well together, and they're working really hard. You can see it, and you can see how hard it is because the pack is all strung out, single file, trying to chase.
That uphill grade on that back side of the course, as you said, really hits you. It may look awful subtle as you're walking it, but when you're riding it, it can almost feel like a wall.
But it doesn't seem to stop the chase, boy. Look at these riders, they're really working hard.
You can tell a lot by looking at the faces of these guys, can't you?
You really can. Some of the riders really grimace, and it's really a waste of energy to grimace too much, but sometimes you just can't help it. You know, there you see the mouths are open, but they're really not grimacing. They're just trying to take in as much oxygen as they can. They're trying to work well together and really try not to let the other guy know how much they're hurting, because this is important now. These three riders have to work together, but it matters who wins this lap.
So they'll work their way one more time across the start-finish line here at the men's criterium. We'll take a break. Don't forget that...
We are now talking to you from the baseball field at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, where in about 45 minutes, the Olympic baseball team will conclude a 7-game series with the Cuban national team. And Steve Alvarez in just a moment. You're watching the Carolinas Invitational on USA Sports.
We're back in downtown Charlotte with the men's criterium. Right now, Norm Alvis is the leader. Doug Shapiro right there with him. And Steve Pyle also up there in the lead. But things have certainly tightened up considerably, Connie. The field is caught up to the guys, and no more do they enjoy that little breakaway that they had before.
Well, we've got 5 riders in the lead really working well together. You know, it makes it a little easier for those guys because they still have a lot of time left, but they're working well together, and we'll see what happens.
All right, earlier this afternoon, we had an exciting women's race with a surprise finisher in the men's criterium as they continue to work the 9/10 of a mile course through downtown Charlotte.
We still have Norm Alvis of the U.S. Olympic team out in the front with Andy Pollin, his teammate, right behind him. They're really working strongly, really smooth working together.
See Doug Shapiro and the last of the 5 of that group as they get set to cross the start-finish line. And as the men cross the start-finish line, let us welcome the winner of the women's event. Betsy Davis joins us up here. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Betsy. And
to race here in Charlotte around the streets of downtown as we continue our welcome back to Charlotte, North Carolina, as USA Sports live coverage of the men's criterium here at the Carolinas Invitational continues. 9/10 of a mile loop throughout the streets of downtown Charlotte. Nearly 100 riders, some of the strongest in America, are here, and a number of strong foreign competitors as well, racing in this 1 hour and 25-minute men's criterium. Connie, your impression so far of the race, has it been a quicker pace than maybe what you expected as we take a look at the leaders, Andy Pollin, Norm Alvis, and Steve Pyle, who are the top three right now?
I think it's the biggest surprise for me has been the aggressiveness of the American team. They are really riding strongly here. We see Steve Pyle in the lead right there. You know, we expected Doug Shapiro, who's a professional cyclist with the 711 team, to be aggressive, to be strong, and he is. He's in that lead group, but it's really been those young Olympians who are doing so well here today, and it's really great to see that. They were just selected to the Olympic team, and they're on a real high right now.
Let's talk about the Olympians. Andy Pollin and Norm Alvis are in the lead group. They are part of the team time trial team. And time trial team a little bit different than standard road racing.
It really is. It is a time trial event. It's an event where 4 riders go out. The formation of it looks just like what you're seeing right here, where you have riders working together, sharing the pace at the front, and that's why these riders are so strong here today, because they're focused in on their team time trial effort. They work together as a team, and of course it is a team event. So it's the U.S. team took a bronze medal in 1984 at the Olympic Games, and they'll be trying to duplicate or improve on that in Seoul, Korea. It's 4 riders on the team, and those are the strong riders, the young Olympians that we have here today.
And there are those 2 young Olympians, Norm Alvis and Andy Pollin, just broken away a little bit as they cross the start-finish line as the racing continues here in Charlotte. Again, you mentioned the aggressiveness of these young Olympians, these amateurs, and you can see that the leaders are already in the backstretch now. Boy, they're just continuing to push.
And they continue to work so well together. You see Norm Alvis, you see Steve Pyle here coming through, all of them together. Most of them are on different teams, with the exception of Alvis and Pollin, who here are representing the U.S. team. The other riders are really independent unto each other, except for now they're in a formation, 5 guys together. They formed a brotherhood, if you will. They have to work well together in order to get to the finish line, where they will then compete against each other to win. Right now they're not adversaries.
You mentioned aggressiveness before. Is it a different style of racing at all between the United States and Europe?
Oh, it certainly is. In Europe, racing is, you know, it's one of the most popular sports. It's like baseball, it's like football here in America. So you'll see racers, you know, you see more races, you'll see more confidence in their racing. And our racing in America has just begun to come up. We had such great results in 1984 at the Olympic Games, and you really see that reflected in the kind of aggressiveness and good strong riding that we have in these are Olympic riders.
And again, as you take a look at the lead men, they come across the start-finish line. They're averaging just about 30 miles an hour, and they will do that for an hour and a half. And that takes an incredible amount of stamina and endurance. These athletes in cycling are certainly the finest fit athletes that there are in the world. It's the only way to compete in a sport like this. Take a look at the riders again, as you mentioned, Connie, in a line as they draft each other. That really is a key technique here in cycling. You need to draft, you need to break that wind resistance. It really is a key to racing and to winning.
Drafting, that's a word you've heard from car racing. You might not expect to hear it. 5 riders away, all working very smoothly. There's a great example right there, one right after the other, relying on each other to help set the pace, to help break the wind, so that the ones in the back can rest, and then when they come to the front, they do their hard effort, and that's what keeps the speed of the race high.
And again, you don't have to be on the same team to work together, because they know unless they work together, they're not going to stay out in front very long.
No, that's right. They have to work well together, and they also have to recover. You have to rest on your bike. When you tell somebody that they're resting, you look at them and you say, but they're going 30 miles an hour. How can they be resting? But they really are, and that's the key to success.
Well, Connie Carpenter-Finney says they're resting. It looks like they're working awful hard to me. Those are your leaders here at the men's criterium. Men's criterium continues with Andy Pollin in the lead, Norm Alvis and Steve Pyle, the top 3 in this breakaway group as they lead the field around the streets of downtown Charlotte. One of the disadvantages, obviously, in road racing compared to the velodrome, the track cycling, is the changing conditions. You see them going over railroad tracks, different types of concrete. There are a couple of bumps here and there on the way. Connie, you obviously have to be aware of those things. You have to be thinking not only of tactics when you're racing, but also the course. As you mentioned before, right now they're crossing a set of railroad tracks just before the finish line. You got to be careful or you're going to knock yourself right out of the race.
You know, road racing takes you over all kinds of road surfaces, and you certainly have to be aware and alert, but those kind of road hazards are what do lead to accidents, and the good bike racer is able to adapt to that. They can ride over the manhole covers, they can get across the cracks and the bumps, they can get across the railroad tracks, but it does take a lot of confidence on the bike, a lot of good technique, and these riders sure have it.
And don't forget, this is a time criterium. So far, they've gone just over 1 hour. And in 4 minutes from now, they will go to 10 laps to go. It is a timed race, but when they get down, they compute the time per lap so that they can end on time. Take a look at the rules of the race. 85 minutes with about 15 minutes to go. They will designate it 10 laps remaining. And from there on out, the first person to complete those 10 laps is the winner. So it is a timed event, but they do time the average speed per lap so that they can end this thing right at 85 minutes. And of course, the way they do this is so that it ends at the finish line and not so that they run out of time somewhere halfway around the course. There is a definite finish, and in just a few minutes the riders will be informed that they have 10 laps to go, and then things are going to change a little bit out there, aren't they?
Well, certainly when the pack sees 10 laps to go, that will motivate them, and they'll realize that it's now or never for the chase. The leaders, they're already motivated. They're working well together. There's 5 very strong riders there. We have our 2 Olympians, Alvis and Paulin, in there. You see them in the red, white, and blue jerseys. You see Steve Pyle sitting second with Jerry Fornes in front, and you know, Doug Shapiro, that professional on the 7-Eleven team who's been riding so strongly all year. It's a very strong group, and it's going to be very difficult for this pack, although you can see them start to chase now. I think it's going to be very difficult for the pack to overcome their 50-second deficit at this point.
See the pack beginning to stretch out a little bit. That indeed means the lead is increasing. Talk about that lead group. You and I talked a little while ago about how expensive these machines are that they ride, and you mentioned that one of the lead riders has one of the newer forms of racing bikes.
That's right. Jerry Fornes is riding on a Kestrel, and if you take a look at it, he's sitting second there. It's you know, it might look the same as the other bikes from a distance, but you see it close up. It's got some real wide diameter, real wide and flat tubing. It doesn't look like the kind of bike that you can buy at Kmart, not even in a normal bike shop. They're very expensive. They're very high technology bikes, and you know, right now we see a lot of changes in the technology in cycling, although you know, I don't know that it makes that much difference.
So the lead riders continue to work. It is a bumpy course. Again, it is fairly flat, but as Connie pointed out earlier, there is one climb on the backside of this course, and it really gets to you, especially now after they've been going for over an hour at a speed of very close to 30 miles an hour. As you take a look at our leaders as they cross the finish line and work their way around. We're down to 9 laps remaining in this race, and the team tactics will begin to come into play. You'll see the riders looking around. They'll begin to shift position, and that strategy that they talked about as we take a look at the rest of the group will come into play. You'll see those different colored jerseys begin to bunch up as they work their tactics.
Sure, you see a lot of teams in there that aren't represented in the lead group, and they want to be up there, but the pack simply does not go around a criterium course like this as fast as a smaller group of riders. Those 5 riders are working so efficiently together. There's never a lapse in their concentration. The pack, their speed ebbs and flows. And also when they go through the turns, there's a lot of braking. It's like an accordion effect as you go back through the pack through the turns, so they're always trying to make up for that time.
All right, the men's criterium continues, and when we come back, we'll give you a live update from the men's baseball. Team USA versus Cuba. A live interview back live in Charlotte, North Carolina, with 8 laps remaining in the men's criterium race here through the streets of downtown Charlotte. They've been going for well over an hour now at a speed of close to 30 miles an hour, and they make their way around the final turn in the backstretch as they work their way down to 7 laps to go. And the pace has picked up somewhat. The riders are beginning to make their moves as you see them sprint down the line. And things are beginning to happen as they realize they're getting close to the end of the race.
You see Doug Shapiro taking one of the preem laps. That's, of course, a race within the race. He's just picking up a little extra cash. He's a professional racer. He's just doing what he's got to do to earn a living.
You talked about Doug Shapiro. He is a member of the 7-Eleven team. Norm Alvis is one of the leaders up there. He is also a member of the 7-Eleven team. Andy Paulin is with Team Crest. But today, Alvis and Paulin are racing as part of Team USA. Where do the alliances lie?
It's an interesting question, and I wonder if Norm Alvis and Doug Shapiro have had any words about that. You know, the racers do talk to each other during the race when they have the opportunity, and Andy Paulin and Norm Alvis are now going to be Olympic teammates. They are wearing the red, white, and blue Stars and Stripes jerseys, and we've got a little conflict, I think, here coming up between, you know, the club team situation and the national team situation. But in any event, I think the strongest rider right now is definitely Doug Shapiro.
You know, we had a little bit of rain earlier, and we worried that it might be kind of slippery, and there were some tight turns here, but so far it's been a relatively safe race until the last lap when Thomas Craven, number 16 in the race, kind of got bumped outside on that final turn. And
you can see with the lead rider, they come in, there's a little contact. That's not unusual, but what happened was it forced this rider to move outside. It forced Thomas Craven to move out, and he simply could not make that tight turn, and he ended up just riding right off the course. He's lucky he wasn't hurt.
A wise move then to go ahead and continue straight ahead instead of trying to make the turn, because he got out of the fencing, he came back in, and he's in the race. Had he tried to make it, might have been a lot worse.
Yes, and if he would have gone down at the head of the pack like that, it could have been a spectacular crash. You know, he's lucky he got out of the way, he did the safe thing, and, you know, a rider's reactions are trained. And here we have Doug Shapiro still at the lead, still looking strong. Look at the look in his face. He doesn't look like he's working that hard. You know, he's extremely fit. He was the alternate to the 1984 Olympic team. He won the 1984 Coors International Bicycle Classic, which is, of course, a very prestigious stage race. That's a day-to-day race here in America today. Although, like I said, it's surprising me, those young Olympians really working hard. Big Andy Paulin just pulling off there, working so hard.
And you hear the bell. That is another preem lap. They're $300 to whoever crosses the finish line first in this one. So you'll see another race within a race. Again, Doug Shapiro, we mentioned earlier that the leaders don't necessarily lead the whole way. He sat back in comfortable position in the middle of the field until we're more than halfway through this race before he decided to catch up to the lead group, and he saved some energy.
He did, and Norm Alvis, of course, the younger amateur 7-Eleven rider now on the Olympic team, was aggressive throughout the race, and that may take its toll toward the end of the race here. But, you know, this is a less than an hour-and-a-half event. The team time trial is 100 kilometers. That's a 2-hour event where they average 30 miles per hour. So these guys are used to the speed and they're used to the distance. It'll be a great finish.
Well, I tell you what, these guys have really stretched it out. They have a lead now of close to a minute. They are well on the backside of the course, and we are still waiting for the rest of the pack to come to the finish line. You take a look at the leaders, the rest of the pack now, the next group is coming across the finish line, and the lead group has more than a 1-minute advantage. So I doubt that with the few laps that we have remaining, they'll catch it.
You can see the large pack getting a little smaller.
And the lead chasers are already.
And again, the lead riders are really hanging in tough. They've got a great lead.
All right, the lead riders continue to push it. Andy Shapiro up there among them. We'll come back with the exciting finish of the race, and we'll update. 5 laps remaining here at the men's criterium in Charlotte with Andy Paulin, Norm Alvis, and Doug Shapiro. The 3 men in that lead breakaway group, they have a substantial lead, about a minute lead over the rest of the field. But Connie, as we saw just a moment ago, Andy Paulin decided with 5 laps to go, it was time to make a move.
He sure did, and now we see it switched up over on the backside of the course, and it's Norm Alvis out in front. The U.S. team is definitely taking turns making an attack, trying to break away solo. They probably realize that Doug Shapiro is just too quick to beat in the sprint. These guys are time trial specialists. They're not afraid to go out there by themselves, and you can see Norm Alvis really pushing it through these turns. It's not Andy Paulin, it's Norm Alvis out in front. They're both wearing the USA Stars and Stripes jerseys.
There's Doug Shapiro.
And there we see Doug Shapiro at the head of the second group with Steve Pyle in the red there, and well, I don't know. That was a great move by Norm Alvis. He is having a great race today.
Well, we talked before about where the alliances lie, and obviously I think for right now, Norm Alvis and Andy Paulin working together as Team USA, and Norm Alvis continues to push it.
He really does, and you can see how smooth he is. His knees are in. He's very aerodynamic. He sits up just a little bit so he can breathe easily on this uphill stretch on the backside of the course. You see him taking those turns, pedaling all the way through the turns. It's 4 laps to go, and you know he believes he can get away. We saw it in the women's race with three laps to go. Betsy Davis going off by herself, and now we don't see a concerted chase. They're spread across the road.
All right, now let me ask you, we see Norm Alvis out in the lead. What is Andy Pollan going to do to try and keep the rest of this field from catching?
Well, Andy Pollan, fortunately for him, he doesn't have to worry about the rest of the field. He only has to worry about his breakaway group. He's got 4 riders, and what he'll try to do is just slow them down by not working. That's called blocking. That's a kind of an interesting concept. It's not like roller derby. It's not a physical action, but he'll just, you know, slow down the morale of the group. And it's difficult because Norm Alvis is really strong today, and he's taken off, and you can see how hard he's working. And if those riders behind him decide not to work together and not chase, he's gone. And you can see that now. See how slowly they're going in comparison to Norm Alvis.
Doug Shapiro out there, the leader of that second group, as they try to hang with Norm Alvis. And how quickly, once he breaks away from that other group, as he did a little while ago, does he begin to feel the effects of being out on his own, not being able to have the other guys to help him along?
Well, you get into a certain rhythm when you're away, and of course he knows it's 3 laps to go. That's only 6 minutes really of hard work, and you know he has the confidence to know that he can do that. And of course he's got Andy Pollan slowing things down, and maybe Doug Shapiro being on his own 7-11 team, the same team that Norm Alvis is regularly on, is thinking, well, I'm not really going to chase this guy down either. And suddenly you've got a situation where Norm Alvis has the advantage, and he's taking full advantage of it.
All right, 3 laps to go. We're winding down to the finish. Norm Alvis right now is the man to beat. When we come back to Charlotte, North Carolina, we'll have the finish of the men's criterium at the Carolinas Invitation. You're back at Charlotte, North Carolina, and Norm Alvis continues to lead the field. As we have 3 laps remaining, Norm Alvis, Doug Shapiro is the next closest man, and Jerry Forms is third. And Norm Alvis is now lapping the field. And Connie, what happens now to the other guys trying to catch him? It's awful hard for him to figure out where the guy is.
Well, it's a difficult situation now for Norm Alvis because it is only 2 laps to go. He's come right past the lead, large pack, and he's gone right through them. You see that he's already got a gap on them, and the most difficult situation would arise when Norm Alvis could not get, if he was in a situation where he could not get through the pack cleanly like that. Now he has to go right through, and it's going to be very difficult for those 4 riders to come through.
And here's the other breakaway group as they try to catch up. They're working very hard. They're coming across the start-finish line now, but again, they've got a long way to go to catch Norm Alvis. So really, that was a key move for him. Right past the start line, he saw where his spot was. He made a break, and he got through cleanly.
He was lucky he caught the pack on this long straightaway. He was able to get right by them. They probably didn't even know he was coming, and he got to get, you know, he's got such high speed. He's been riding so fast by himself that he can maintain that speed, and you know, there's no stopping Norm Alvis now. There's no way the 4 chasers can get him. He's got basically 2 teammates that are in that chase group of 4. Steve Pyle and Jerry Fornes are the 2 riders who would be obligated to do the chasing. Andy Pollan, of course, his U.S. teammate. There's Norm Alvis there with the red, white, and blue jersey. Somebody's tagged on along with him, but that person is 1 lap behind him. And Norm Alvis, all he has to think about is just keeping it smooth and getting to the finish line.
So the race now really is for second place.
It really is for second place, and hopefully for those 4 that they won't get into the pack on the last lap, because that could make a very interesting finishing sprint if those 4 leaders get into the pack on the last lap.
Norm Alvis is the man. Again, he got through cleanly on that last straightaway. You talked about the last straightaway. It's some 500 meters long.
It's a long way from the last turn down to the finish line, and even though it's mostly downhill, there's a little bit of wind on the course, and it's a long stretch, and it's a very interesting sprint because the rider has to be a little bit patient on a sprint like that. You can't go too early, or you can just die and get past at the finish. Norm Alvis, 1 lap to go.
You didn't have to hear it from the announcer. Norm Alvis put up 1 finger and said, 1 to go, I'm on my way, and I think he is a very confident young man right now.
You know, he really is confident, and even though he's working so hard, you could see it in his face that he was relaxed and confident. He just knows he's in full control of this race. He's still maintaining very good technique on his bike, taking great lines through the turn, going much faster than the pack can go. And even though there's a few riders behind him, Norm Alvis is all alone in the lead.
How good does that feel for Norm Alvis, not just to win this race as he seems about to do, but also to beat riders like Doug Shapiro, one of the top professional riders, and some of the others in this field?
It's a great psychological boost for a rider like Norm Alvis. He is a fantastic rider. He's had a great year. He's a promising young amateur, and this is just the kind of race that he needs to help keep his psyche up as we go into the final month before the Olympic Games.
Psychological boost, as you said, definitely what they need because they're kind of tired. They've been racing a lot. The national championships were not that long ago. The Olympic trials with all that pressure were not that long ago. So now they can kind of relax, and he can absorb that confidence and carry that with him to Seoul.
He really can, and you can see here that he's got what it takes. He's got great position on his bike. He looks very strong, very smooth, and he wasn't afraid to make that effort. That's what I like. When a rider seizes an opportunity, makes a firm commitment to a move like that, and it takes a lot of guts to do that, and I think he showed us a lot here today in this race.
Norm Alvis working very hard around the final turn, but I'll tell you what, working very hard, but you can still see a trace of a smile on his face.
Really, Ken, it's a little confusing for him because he can't see the back of the pack, and he doesn't know if his 4 chasers have gotten into the pack, so he can't let up until he gets to the finish line here. But here he comes. You can see him. He's looking for him. He knows he's got it. He's going to sit up. The rest of the pack has to continue, but Norm Alvis, 1988 Olympic team member, 7-11 team member, has won this race decisively. What a great effort.
Norm Alvis, Team USA, wins the men's criterium here in Charlotte, North Carolina. He made a bold move, as Connie Carpenter-Finney said. It paid off, and he is indeed the winner.
And that's a man, that's a happy man, and he looks like he's barely out of breath. Now we're just waiting. See, the other riders have slowed up. We're waiting for that sprint for second place. Lucky number 7, Norm Alvis today.
So Mr. Alvis can enjoy the feeling of a winner as we see the look on the other faces as these men come to cross the finish line and race for second place as they'll sprint to the finish. That looks like Doug Shapiro is the man.
Doug Shapiro will take it easily all the way to the line. Close finish, Andy Pollin second, Jerry Forns third, and Steve Pyle fifth. What a great race.
And again, Norm Alvis, the winner of the men's criterium here at Charlotte, North Carolina. 1 hour and 25 minutes of grueling cycling. Let's take a look one more time at the replay. Again, we talked about the main race was for second place. Let's take a look at it as they come to the finish line.
You can see Doug Shapiro. He made a good move. He gets clearly out in front of Andy Pollin, who's not known for his speed, but Andy Pollin had a good, strong finish to the finish.
All right, here are your final standings at the men's criterium at Charlotte, North Carolina. Norm Alvis finishes first, Doug Shapiro is second, and Andy Pollin, another member of that Team USA, is in third. So we're going to go to a break. We'll come back, and it's baseball. Once again, the final standings here at the men's criterium. Norm Alvis, Team 7-11, and Team USA is the winner, and there is our winner. Doug Shapiro finished second. Andy Pollin finished third, but again, Norm Alvis showing the great move, cutting through the pack. It was a key move with just a couple of laps to go, and the smiling face of our winner, as he knows he ran a very good race and beat a very strong field, Connie.
He really did. You can see him when he came across the line. He was just so happy. There he is. He's in a field that he has lapped on this 1 mile course. He's 1 mile ahead. You can see him put his arms up in jubilation. He's a happy man right here, and he deserves to have this kind of a race, this kind of a reaction.
And the crowd responded because Norm Alvis is now coming to the finish line to receive his award as winner of this men's criterium. 1 hour and 25 minutes. And boy, what a fast pace they kept up for that entire time.
He really, you know, he just won the national team time trial recently. He's such a good, strong racer. It's such a great feeling to win a bike race. You know, you really feel like you're on top of the world. And I think in an Olympic year, the more races you win, the more confidence you build up, and just the better your performance will be at the Olympic Games.
All right, thank you very much, Connie Carpenter-Finney, my partner, here for the men's criterium. Norm Alvis, the winner. Now it is our coverage of baseball. Team USA versus Cuba. So let's go out to the baseball stadium and Ted Robinson. Jerry Forms finished 4th and Steve Pyle was 5th at a very exciting men's criterium. Right now, let's go down to the start-finish line to Connie Carpenter-Finney, who is with our winner. Connie?
Well, I'm standing here with a really happy Norm Alvis. It was a great effort. Did you think you could stay away that long?
I definitely did. I, was judging the power of the brake for the last 20 laps of the race. And I attacked at the appropriate moment, and I figured I probably would stay away since I thought as much power as these guys did, considering who was in it. Andy would be helping me.
Well, that's an interesting point you're bringing up, because there were 5 guys in that lead group. You were working very well together. You had your teammate Andy Pollan, your Olympic teammate, and you also had your club teammate Doug Shapiro in there. Yes. Who were your teammates?
Well, I was riding as the national team today, so it was mostly Andy, but a teammate, the club teammate has to have some recognition for his rider in there, no matter if he's on the national team or not. So it's hard to say how much Doug was working. He wasn't working for me, but he wasn't going to work his hardest against me.
What does this mean for you going into the Olympic Games? I know you're into the final preparation now. What kind of help is a race like this?
Well, it definitely gives me a lot of confidence, not only in my own ability, but in the ability of the team. Considering that even though we're a national team all year long, we're rival racers, and today we work together very well. So that shows some really good potential for the team time trial in the Olympics.
Norm Alvis, I want to wish you the best of luck in the Olympic Games. Congratulations today, and
thank you very much.
Back to you, Steve.
All right, thank you very much, Connie. Connie Carpenter-Finney talking to our winner, Norm Alvis, here at the